Wow, there's about 75 questions in there. I'll answer the last one first. I wasn't at all determined to take on this role. In fact, when it was originally offered to me, I turned it down. In spite of being an enormous fan of Michael Moyer, the filmmaker, and had really actively been pursuing trying to work with him. And even in spite of that, when I initially got offered this, because I shared what I'm sensing is a little bit of just a gut reaction bias about the idea of remaking this film, which I shared it, and I totally understand why people feel that way. But then when I met, I said, so I turned it down, and then another actor accepted it. And I thought, man, I might have made a mistake here because I love that actor. He's a heavyweight. And then something happened with the film that he was doing, and he fell out, and they came back to me, and I said, you know what? I've been thinking about it, and I'd gone back and I'd reread the book, torturing myself, even though I knew this other dude had the role that I'd been offered and turned down. And I went and I started thinking about it. So then when Michael said, is there any way you could meet me in New York? Because he was in Denmark and I was in LA. I said, I'm actually in New York for the next 2 days. He said, I'm gonna come on a plane tomorrow. You just give me 2 hours. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to get into it with him, you know what I mean? So I said, all right, I got 2 hours as well because I got this other meeting and I didn't have another meeting. And then that 2 hours went up and he's like, you got another meeting? I was like, nah, I was just bullshitting you in case I wanted to leave early, And we spent 14 hours together. And by the end of it, we realized we were both obsessed with this phenomenon of privatization of prisons, which has been happening in the US and then all over the world. It's funny, the first time I ever came across this, it was my financial advisor advocating me to invest in prison stock. And what you have to understand, it's a rigged game because the value of those stocks raise and fall dependent upon the occupancy of the prison. But if you then own the prison and get to choose, decide, or at least be a deciding factor in how long those people stay in that prison, then like any commodity, it's trading at 100% of its value at all times because it's operating at 100% of its potential at all times. Now that's all well and good if you're a business person or investor, but if you're the person who did some small thing that was out of character and they got embroiled in that system and all of a sudden 2 years or 8 months turns into 4 years and you come out and you're not fit for regular society anymore. So what the French government were trying to do with French Guiana prison colony was they were trying to colonize French Guiana, but to begin with they had to cut down trees, build roads, and so this prison colony was really ostensibly a labor camp to generate money. And we thought, when we made that connection, for us it was like, you know what? Forget the first film, forget this predecessor. This is a story of a real man who really, who existed, and a beloved, important piece of source material. And all of a sudden, all my reservations just went away, and I said, let's go make the movie we want to make, and forget that our predecessor, forget the bias, forget all of the inevitable comparison we're going to have to endure, and just go make a movie we want to make. So that's what we did. Yeah, I didn't want to, honestly. I'd just done it once before. I just did a film called The Lost City of Zed, where I'd gone from 185 pounds to 145 pounds, and it was 8 months later when I started doing this film, and I did exactly the same thing that I'd done to lose all that weight the first time. My body just didn't want to do it this time. It wasn't responding the same way, and so I had to be really hard on myself. The first time when I did it for Lost City of Zed, I felt good the whole time. I lost 40 pounds in 10 weeks, but I did it healthy, and I felt good, and I was fit, and then this time I just felt horrible. So I wasn't very nice to work with, I don't think, on this film. Everyone's really nice to me here, but there's a couple days where I was brutal on set. Yeah, that was our second aspiration with this whole thing. is we wanted to do a deeply satisfying, we needed a love story. We needed a deeply satisfying relationship. And what's great about these guys is that, I have a theory that that is very interesting in storytelling to introduce characters, male characters predominantly, in prison or war. Because it's this unifying environment where you don't get to see the context of anybody else's life or personality that colors it. But you get the sense that these two men in this film are men that would never ordinarily enter each other's orbits. And then because of necessity and this unlikely friendship blossoms and turns into what we hope is a really satisfying relationship. because that's ultimately the entire film is that relationship. So that doesn't work well.